TikTok has a knack for bringing weird things to my attention. It introduced me to the weird world of Illegal Hamilton, the Ratatouille musical, and its weird sister For You page. But for every interesting or niche topic that I learn about through TikTok, I feel like I learn about 1,000 nothing ones. So I try my best to discern between the ones that are interesting enough to maybe make a video about, and the ones that aren't. And one that I had never really considered at first was this. I'm sure you've all seen it.
Where's my dad? I'm all alone. I'm too small to be here on my own.
And yes, this video is very funny and absurd, mostly due to this kid's face looking off into the middle distance, and this very uncanny puppet. But this TikTok never sparked something within me to make a video about it. Don't get me wrong, this kid is very talented. It's just that I've always been weirdly aware of the Finding Nemo musical at Animal Kingdom. And from all accounts, I had heard that it was good, but nothing amazing. But then, out of an almost morbid curiosity, I watched it, and I realized that not only is it a fascinating relic for theme park lovers and musical theater lovers, which I happen to be both, but it also is kind of good. At the very least, there are a lot of interesting aspects that I could talk about forever. There's also, in my opinion, a kind of dark and deeply sad truth about this musical and its current existence in the parks. So let's talk about Finding Nemo the Musical and Impending Doom. That's the title of the video. Much like the amount of Weezer albums I would deem perfect, this video comes to you in 8 parts. Yeah, that's right, 8. Part 1, how? So, in Disney's Animal Kingdom, there is a land called Dino Land, USA, and in that land, there is a theater called the Theater in the Wild. This theater has been there since the park's opening in the late 90s and has hosted 3 or 4, depending on who you ask, different shows during its lifetime. The first was a show entitled Journey into the Jungle Book. This was a kind of weird adaptation of the Disney film of the same name, with a lot of Cats-esque nightmare fuel and puppets.
And I often stop by to see how lonely the man was getting along. He was a favorite of all the wolf cubs in the pack.
Journey into the Jungle Book was open for a little more than a year, but was pretty quickly replaced by a much more relevant property that Disney had just released, Tarzan. Tarzan Rocks was also a very weird show, and I love it. It was this acrobatic and rather edgy show that took you through the story of Tarzan through dance and live music. The set is all industrial and rugged, and it feels like a response to the success of Rent and Cirque du Soleil. In all honesty, this isn't really my cup of tea. I'm not that big on the music of Tarzan or the aesthetics of Rent, but I love how over the top and weird this thing is. This is the sort of thing Disney would never do today. It's essentially a concert of Tarzan songs sung by these cool youth pastors, and it was a pretty big success in the park.
Parents, kids, sweethearts, and friends, it's about finding where you belong. It's about believing in yourself and believing in the ones that you love. So we dedicate this song to you, everyone, connected here, deep inside, connected in our hearts. From our family to yours, this one's for you.
The closest I've seen to something like this is that Lion King show they have in Fantasyland right now, which I honestly prefer more and is really great because, let's be honest, the songs in Lion King beat out Phil Collins any day. But as successful as Tarzan Rocks was, 8 years into its run, the writing was on the wall that it was about to close. 8 years is kind of a long time for a live show to run at a theme park. A Broadway adaptation of the movie was about to open, and we all know how that went. There were also a few accounts of accidents happening during live performances, although those haven't really been verified. And strangely, speculation of a musical based on Finding Nemo began to arise. Part 2, what? So, Disney had the rights to Pixar, and more importantly, in the world of theme parks, they had the theme park rights to Pixar. And around the early to late aughts, due to the very high success of Pixar, they started frantically throwing Pixar stuff into their parks. New rides, new characters, new lands. Odds are, if you were visiting a Disney park in the 2000s to the early 2010s, there was some new Pixar stuff. But what makes Finding Nemo perfect for Animal Kingdom? Well, that's a silly question, you silly. Finding Nemo is a perfect property for Animal Kingdom. Why, they are talking animals. It's a thinker. You're just gonna have to think about it for a second. Animals Animal Kingdom. One of my friends who edits my videos didn't get that joke, so I really wanted to milk it for all it's worth. Animal Kingdom. As much as I love Finding Nemo, it was probably my favorite movie as a kid. The Finding Nemo aspect of this is the less interesting part. What I find interesting is that they opted to do an original musical. Usually, if they are going to introduce an original show at the parks, they would create all new characters. See Country Bear Jamboree or America Sings. But Disney films are already so music heavy that live adaptations of the movies in the parks usually rely on the iconic music in the film. But to do a musical based on a movie with no songs, it's rare for them, and to me, when that happens, it's very exciting. Finding Nemo was a few years old at this point and was already insanely popular, much like all Pixar films of the time. So to take this already iconic film and put music to it would be no small task. So who would they get to do it? Part 3. Who? Avenue Q is a musical about puppets having sex. More importantly, it's a show about living in that weird limbo stage in your life where you're not quite middle-aged, but you're no longer young, how one can find their purpose after school when the world seems so grim and dark. It's about the futility of real purpose and how to come to terms with mediocrity and loving the regular. But it's also about puppets having sex. The music and lyrics of Avenue Q were written by Jeff Marks and Robert Lopez. Robert Lopez has since gone on to do numbers on Broadway and in films, writing some of the most iconic musical numbers of the past decade. But I think it's important to note that he got his start in writing a clever and perhaps sometimes poorly aged puppet musical. But he didn't write it alone. He wrote it with his wife, Kristen Anderson Lopez. I have so much power in these hands with who I can throw at you. Gary Busey! Robert and Kristen had written a slew of music for Playhouse Disney, Disney's children-focused block of the Disney Channel. They wrote stuff for shows like Wonder Pets and Bear in the Big Blue House, one of my personal favorites.
The world's so big and I'll be so small out there in the wide, wide world.
So, because these two had a knack for puppet musicals and writing music with a youthful tone that could still be enjoyed and appreciated by all, they were an obvious pick. But other than just the composers and writers for Finding Nemo the Musical, Disney kind of pulled out all the stops for the creative team behind this thing. The puppet designer from the Lion King musical, a Tony Award-winning director. I don't really say this often, but this was sort of a perfect storm of creative talent. And it was being done by Disney. In the parks, no less. This is rare, and for someone like me, this is very exciting. So let's talk about it. Is this as good as it seems? Kind of. Part 4, the musical. So the first thing you'll notice if you start watching the most viewed recording of the Finding Nemo musical is...
Wow! Look at this spectacular view! Did your husband deliver, or did he deliver?
Which is absurd. How is this the most viewed recording of this musical? It has 4 million views! Thanks, Disney Rob. Robbed me of a good bootleg. So I ended up watching a different recording from YouTuber Steve's Theme Park Shows, and he was a great resource for this video. I'll link him down in the doobly-doo. Anyway, on to the start of the actual musical. We get a small opening bit in which Marlin and his wife Coral are looking over their eggs.
We still have to name them. I like Nemo.
Nemo? Well, we did name one Nemo, but I'd like most of them to be Marlin Jr.
Right away, you'll see that the puppets are a little stiff, and I guess it just comes down to my general gripe of traditional puppets, which is that they don't really emote. They just sort of stay in one facial position the whole time. In my opinion, and I think this is going to be a hot take, but I really can't tell, all puppets should just be Muppets. You know when Kermit is mad, the guy just does this with his hands, and normal puppets just don't really allow that versatility of emotions. Anyway, Coral dies, and it's at this moment, it's very early on, mind you, that you start to realize just how fast they're going to move this story forward.
Get inside, Coral. No, Coral, don't go out there.
That was quick. And it's really no fault to the writers of this thing. They only have 34 minutes to tell the story of an hour-and-a-half long movie. I gave the Ratatouille musical kind of a hard time for doing this too, but I think here it kind of makes more sense. Sure, I would love for it to be longer, but you have to put yourself into the shoes of the people watching this thing. They're at a theme park, and most people at a theme park want to do a lot of things, and they want to do a lot of exciting things. And to most people, watching a show and just sitting down doing nothing is not all too exciting. Compared to, say, Expedition Everest, the Finding Nemo musical is kind of boring and a waste of time. Now, do I agree with this sentiment? Not at all, but I do believe it's what most people are thinking when they go to a theme park. So I think that accounts for not only the runtime of this thing, but just how fast-paced it is. They're throwing new stuff at you every 2 minutes, so you don't just get up and go ride Dinosaur. Through some pretty cool theatrical magic, all of the eggs disappear, and we're left with one egg. Nemo. We cut to our opening number here in the Big Blue World, which covers just about everything the first 10 minutes of the movie does, sans Coral's death. This is probably my favorite type of abridging that this musical does, and I gotta commend them for at least moving stuff forward with music. It makes this already very fast show feel justified in its runtime. This show is almost entirely sung through, which I adore, and it makes it feel like one singular piece rather than just a retelling of Finding Nemo. This song is great, and it does everything you would want it to. It's also the longest song in the entire show, which does end up making the rest of the show feel a tad bit more rushed, but I'll get there. I'd like to address more of the puppets, too. I really like what they did with Mr. Ray here. This thing is a spectacle. There's so much going on stage that I almost feel like I'm doing you an injustice by showing you close-ups. When this recording cuts to a wide, you start to understand just how much thought was put into this thing and its staging, and it's just very cool. Marlin finds out Nemo is going to the drop-off. The drop-off! And in a Les Mis confrontation, Marlin delivers the line that sets up his character arc.
You can't! Now come along! You think that you can do these things, but you are wrong!
I hate you.
And Nemo swims off into the oblivion in one of the funniest and weirdest musical moments I've ever seen.
Nemo, what are you doing? You get back here! You are in big trouble, young man. Do you hear me? Big trouble!
It's sort of like seeing Muppet legs when they let the puppets move on their own. It's a little spooky, you know? I also love this big projection of the scuba diver when Nemo gets caught. It adds to this level of kitsch that I feel like Disney doesn't do anymore. I'm getting ahead of myself. I love it. It's interesting, though. The very intense and sad moments of the original film, when put on stage with these puppets, just never reads. It's always just funny and bizarre looking, and you don't really feel the weight of these events in Marlin, mostly because he's a weird fleshy brick on stage. Finding Nemo is a very funny film, like most of the early Pixar movies are, but it's also quite tragic for Marlin, especially the first act. And I think that was a sort of uphill battle that they were fighting when developing this thing, and that's why ultimately they cut most of the tragic moments down from the original film. The dramatic and serious moments from Finding Nemo are just cut to create more of a fun and quick jaunt, which is why they cut the scene inside of the whale and condensed and shortened very crucial moments. The story here is a vehicle for great puppetry and songs. I think that's important to note. Marlin chases after Nemo. Has everyone here seen Finding Nemo? I'm gonna assume we've all seen it. It'll make this whole thing a lot easier. If you haven't, pause the video and come back. It's amazing. You're gonna love it. It's a very beautiful film. Anyway, Marlin meets Dory and she sings a very quirky little intro song. And I love it. It's very Julie Andrews and classical musical theatery and all that. It's just so short.
I have no short-term memory. I forget things almost instantly. I'm not even sure what I just said.
I wish she had her own song to introduce herself with Marlin. Maybe it would be a duet of sorts. I picture it would be something like Sort of Fairy Tale from Ordinary Days. In fact, it'd probably be exactly like that. Marlin and Dory have such a great dynamic that I feel we don't see go to its full potential here. I think their relationship is as important as Marlin and Nemo's, so it's a shame there's not really enough time in the show to flesh out these moments between them. Bruce and his posse's song, Fish Are Friends Not Food, has to be one of the catchiest in the entire show. It encompasses that sort of old-timey classical musical theater style I mentioned with Dory's entrance, and it really makes me wish that the Lopez's would do more stuff in this style. It really shines through some of the less interesting contemporary songs in this one. It also ends with this very, I'm not sure how to say this any other way, Andrew Lloyd Webber-y rock outro. I mean, it's just rock, but it's done in this very silly, over-the-top theater kid not knowing what rock actually sounds like way that I instantly pinned it to Andrew Lloyd Webber or Jonathan Larson, which is fine. The Lopez's just very clearly wore their influences on their sleeves with this one, something that becomes very apparent in Crush the Sea Turtles' Go With the Flow. I don't think you could have gotten a more Beach Boysy sound if you had Murray Wilson come in and scream at you for a few hours. I love this one though. It's a song that's really too high for anyone to sing and is ridiculous, but the guy in this performance just comes in and kills it. I have no real way of knowing who that is in this video, and I really urge you to not go stalk people to figure it out. Please don't do that. But if that guy from this performance is watching, you rule. I find this song interesting because it's so clearly a Beach Boys parody, but the guy on the cast album playing Crush does like this Jamaican accent for it, and it just sounds so haphazard. On the topic of the cast album, this might be one of my least favorite cast albums, especially when compared to the live version. None of the songs sound as good as they do on stage. Everyone just sings with little to no performance energy. The songs are so sloppily produced overall. I just really don't like it. I can't recommend it, which is a shame because I really love cast albums and I think they're a perfectly valid way to absorb a sung-through musical like this for the first time, and yeah, I just don't really like it. Don't listen to it. Hi, it's low quality Mac segment. I'm filming this rather late at night and on my iPhone propped against a candle. I felt that it was important to explain the situation in which this album was recorded in. To call it a cast album like I did, when I was actually recording it is kind of incorrect. This thing is more of a concept record with most of the characters actually being sung by the writers of the musical. Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez are the voices of Marlin and Nemo respectively, along with other characters in the show. And the other people, the voice of Crush and Bruce and all of them, my guess is that they are just friends of the Lopez's. That doesn't really make me like this album anymore, but I do think it does explain why it does sound so unfinished, I guess. I don't know, you could go listen to this album and have a completely different experience than me. I just felt like it was important to sort of explain the circumstances the album was recorded in, just so it doesn't sound like I'm being a hater for no reason, and so everyone understands why it's not very good. At least in my opinion. Anyway, back to full quality Max. Huzzah. I love the big Crush puppet in this number too, though I think what makes it so great is that there's someone moving the eyes around, which just adds an extra layer of realness to it all and distracts me from Marlin's uncanny gaze. It's just a great song. I jumped ahead, however. I forgot to talk about Nemo's B-plot.
Where's my dad? I'm all alone. I'm too small to be here on my own.
Ah, yes. The meme. It's funny because, the meme. I don't know if people actually find this song funny, or if they dislike it, or if they just think the kid looks scared from the original TikTok, or if they think he's very talented. Overall, I just don't understand why this is a meme. Perhaps I'm getting too old and I just don't get all the memes anymore. You guys still like My Name a Jeff? You guys still like Chrissy Wake Up? Is that one? Yeah, this bit might just be painful. This one just feels a little forced to me, and if the meme is that they don't like the song, I don't really agree. I like the song. I think it's fine. I like that it's used as a leitmotif throughout the show. I don't know. I like it. Stop. Get away from me. Stop. Nemo meets his new gang of friends in the tank, and there's a big puppet of Nigel the Pelican, who I love so dearly. He's just so big, and I want him in my house. I know there's probably, technically more impressive puppetry in this show, but he's just a big pelican. I like him. The tank friends sing a song called Together. This is the most trite I feel like the show gets, but it's okay. A little forced theme here and there never hurt anybody. So there is one song that's in the musical that's also in the movie kind of, and that would be Dory's Just Keep Swimming, which is another song in the musical that moves a lot of the story forward.
That is you. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Life isn't all that grim.
I think this song ends up being the best representation of Marlon and Dory's friendship in this musical, but due to the short amount of time they have to really convey this to us, Marlon just kind of ends up looking like an asshole in this. In the film, he certainly acts very unkind to Dory and pretty much everyone else, but you're sort of able to justify it as his built-up fear and worrying for his child. When he condescends to Dory, it's because he's so blinded by his fears as a father that he can't fathom that someone else can have their best interests in mind.
Heaven knows what you're saying. See, he's swimming away.
Come back.
He's not coming back. You offended him.
We've also seen in a much more fleshed out way what happened to him and his wife and how he's trying to fill the well-rounded shoes of Nemo's lost mother. So in the film, when Marlon tricks Dory into swimming above the trench rather than through the trench as they've been advised, you do believe that at the very least Marlon has good intentions here. In the musical, however, it seems like he's just tricking Dory because he thinks she's stupid.
Come on, partner, trust me on this. It's what friends do.
Okay, I guess, if you say so. Hey, look, something shiny! Where? Over the trench!
I don't think this was an intentional change, but it is a good example of how abridging a story can make it feel rather one note. What Marlon needs as a character is to sing about his feelings more, and there's just not a lot of opportunity for him to do that in the show.
What do we do?
We just keep swimming.
I just want to draw your attention really quickly to how amazing the jellyfish puppets look in this sequence. It is really impressive. The show moves at such a breakneck pace and has so many cool technical elements that it really makes it feel special. If I'm an audience member at a 35-minute long theme park musical, I want to be blown away, and this musical does a very good job at that.
You got your dad out there looking for you. Bet he's on his way right now.
Not my dad, he's not brave enough. He's afraid of whales and sharks and stuff.
They really play up the whole, nah, my dad's a bitch, he's not gonna come back thing in this musical, and it's very funny. Like, the subtlety was an option, guys. This is where Crush's Go With The Flow takes place, and I know I've talked about this song a lot, but I do want to talk about one moment from the movie that they very intentionally placed into the musical that gets me every time.
Things going up! Crush! I forgot! How old are you? 152 and still young! We're going to...
And I'm just happy that they kept that line in, because it's so beautiful and it gives me the chills. There's this almost montage like in the movie where we see different sea creatures talking about Marlin's journey to find Nemo, and there's actually a few original characters in this part.
That is amazing! Wait a minute, we're penguins! We can't fly!
Which is a pretty big swing and a miss in my opinion, but hey, at least there's some original stuff and some new puppets. I'm never gonna say no to more puppets. The show actually jumps a lot more of the film here, skipping the whale scene and subsequent all is lost moment and biggest changing moment in Marlin's character arc, and the chase scene with Nigel the pelican. So we essentially just jump to Marlin finding Nemo in the dentist office pretending to be dead, and that moment reads entirely different in the musical than it would in the film without those previous moments. They really need to wrap it up at this point, so they just rush through the climax. Marlin and Nemo reunite, but oh no, Dory gets trapped. They all swim down in a very cool net prop, and all is well in the ocean blue. They sing a reprise of In the Big Blue World, and that's pretty much it. There's a curtain call, which I always worry that shows like this at theme parks won't do, which seems like a fear that's mostly unfounded. They always seem to do one, at least at Disney. And Crush comes back in, skrelting his little heart out. So yeah, that's the Finding Nemo musical. Kind of weird, right? But in my opinion, such a fun little thing. I really love shows at theme parks. I think they're such an underrated aspect of what makes a good park. But I don't know, maybe I'm weird and I just like the boring small stuff more than most people. The Nemo musical had a lot going for it and was super successful as a result of that. And it ended up running in this state for a little over 13 years. Part 5, Closure. So as you might be aware, March of 2020 marked the end of a lot of things. For me, it marked the end of my sophomore year of high school, the postponement of the They Might Be Giants concert that I had tickets for, the end of general happiness, etc. It also marked the end of the Finding Nemo musical. Yes, unfortunately, among many other things, Disney closed the Finding Nemo musical during the pandemic, marking their final performance of the original show on March 15th, 2020. Which is pretty sad, because it seemed like a lot of the cast of Finding Nemo the Musical had been a part of it for some time, although Disney doesn't really make that information quite clear. You might have noticed that I haven't referenced the names of any of the performers in this musical like I usually would, and that is because Disney does not disclose that information. They treat their employees like employees and don't put their names on any of the marketing material, or any material for that matter, about the show. I think this is a totally good thing. Of course, it's weird and kind of a bummer when I think the actor playing Crush did such a great job and I want to say his name and give him publicity, but overall, when there's this many people seeing your show, I think it's a good thing to maintain some amount of anonymity among you and the guests. People have become creepy in the past and discovered the names of performers for weird and parasocial Tumblr reasons, so I totally respect Disney's decision to not disclose the name of any of their performers. And of course, this goes without saying, I urge all of you to not do that for anyone I've said does a good job in this video. That's not okay. Just a small side tangent, I think it's a very ugly and dark side of the theme park fandom that should be talked about more. Anyway, moving on. Part 6, Return from Darkness. So, the parks in Florida where Finding Nemo the Musical was actually opened pretty early into the pandemic. Like, summer of 2020 early, if you'll recall. It was a crazy, ridiculous time. But the performers in the shows at Disney World are all equity actors, which means that they are in a union. The biggest request from the union was for Disney to provide regular COVID testing for the actors, which Disney did not want to provide. Cool. There's actually kind of a weird relationship, not only between the union and Disney, but the union and the workers it was representing. I think there was a lot of weird disdain between the people who wanted to go work and the people who wanted to stay safe from COVID. It was just such a messy time. It was a pandemic. There were a lot of things on people's minds. Because of this, shows, especially those with performers, did not reopen with the park, which left a lot of the shows in this weird limbo state for quite some time. Beauty and the Beast live on stage, Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, and Finding Nemo the Musical all just stayed shut down as people came flooding into the park, you know, spreading diseases. However, a little over a year later, Disney announced that they would finally be reopening the Finding Nemo Musical. How exciting. But the show would not return in the same way as it once did before. Along with a title change, Disney planned to shorten the show by 10 more minutes. Do you remember? You must remember this. When I said that the weakest parts of the Finding Nemo musical were when they had to abridge the show much more than was possible to keep it nice and nuanced. Oh no! Part 7. Oh no! It's much worse. Finding Nemo, The Big Blue, and Beyond is a 25-minute show that treats you like a baby, you baby. This version has everything I love in musicals. Unnecessary narrator characters, purposely cardboard-looking sets, overbearing LED screens. I mean, come on! What's not to love, you baby? If you can't tell, I'm being facetious here. I think they downgraded the Finding Nemo musical in not only an annoying and much worse way, but just a lazy way. I'm gonna be brief here. The Big Blue and Beyond begins with a screen, yippee, and an introduction by the Tank Friends from the dentist's office. Why? Oh, they also make it take place at the Marine Life Institute, which I believe is from Finding Dory. So that's probably just to tie into that movie, but to me, it feels like Disney is trying to explain why we're all sitting down and watching a bunch of fish sing on stage, which is a very funny thought. I don't think it's true, but if it is, we're doomed. They just entirely skip over Coral's death, which I think is the most important part of Marlin's character, and they just go to the opening number, which they've cut quite a bit. The guy playing Crush in this recording too is also very good, maybe even better than the other guy. But they changed the squirt puppet from someone being suspended from the ceiling and swinging across the stage to just a normal looking puppet, which I think is kind of lame. They got rid of a lot of great things. The big shipwreck set for Bruce, the giant jellyfish, the net at the climax of the film, the Nigel puppet. Wait, where is the Nigel puppet? Oh, man. This is bad. This is bad. I swear, if someone finds him in a dumpster one day, I'm gonna lose it. And there's nothing I dislike more in theater than replacing actual sets with LED screens. It's just so lazy and they look tacky to me, and it's just cheap. This to me seems like a very easy way to both dumb down and make your show cheaper. It's like they cut down stuff that they didn't want to bother with, not what actually could be removed without disrupting important plot points or character arcs. The rest of the show just kind of speed runs through every song without giving the audience any time to breathe, without any cool spectacle or set pieces, just narration. Lots of unnecessary narration.
I hate you!
And with that, we will then swim right toward that boat.
But suddenly, a diver appears!
Yeah, I know. I can see that. I wish I could linger on this version of the show a little bit longer, but truly, there is just so little to say. They cut out Where's My Dad, too, so you can't even go see the meme live anymore. You'd have to go to some junior production of the show, and I'm not doing that. Finding Nemo, The Big Blue and Beyond is an abridging of an abridged retelling of something great. It's sort of like taking everything out of a nice tasty stew until you got a big bowl of water with a single carrot in it. It's not very good. And that's sort of when I realized my true opinions about the Finding Nemo musical. This is the kind of show that only works with a huge budget. I genuinely don't think there's enough here for it to be interesting with the book and music alone. This is a show that's very reliant on spectacle, and when you remove that, yeah, I like some of the songs, but it just doesn't work. It needed the cool technical aspects and the puppets and the grandeur of it all. And I don't know that I would ever have come to that brutal realization that might be influenced by what they did to this musical if they never did that to this musical. If it just existed in the state it was, I think we all would have looked at it and thought that was a cool thing. Which begs the question, why did they do this? Part 8, Impending Doom. So here's the thing with this weird little musical and the aforementioned Impending Doom part of this video. At the end of the day, even though this show is lush with talent and a pretty good score, the show was never made to last. Not only is that not really Disney's MO when it comes to live shows in their parks, but it's not really the goal of any musical, you know, to go forever, nor should it be. And the weirdest thing to me is that it just is still here. You can still go watch Nemo today. At least kind of. No matter how much art like this means to you, or to me, or to any of us, it's all temporary. And not only do I think that's important to recognize, but it's okay. The temporal nature of art is what makes it meaningful. And I honestly believe that's true, and that the Finding Nemo musical is a really good example of that thought. Because occasionally, we forget that. Yes, it's nice to have the world at our fingertips, but we shouldn't live in a world where we have forever access to everything. Even if that thing is great. Especially if it's great. I mean, this thing is way better than Finding Nemo's submarine voyage at Disneyland, and they won't let that thing die either. And here's the thing. Yes, It's nice that there is still a way to go watch Finding Nemo the Musical in some capacity. But doesn't that just feel a bit lazy to you? Based on the previous runtimes of shows in the theater in the wild, Nemo was way past due to be replaced. So why not wait a year and open back up in 2024 with a newer and frankly more relevant show? Here, I'll even give you some ideas. An Encanto show that condenses all of the important story beats to 40 minutes and has all of the hit songs. If you wanted to keep the animal theming of your animal park, you could do a Frozen show that shows all of the animals from Frozen 2, but still has all of the hit songs from the first movie too. I'm a big proponent of original songs and original musicals, so you could do a Turning Red musical that has animals. How about a Moana show? That fits a similar vibe. She has animal friends and the songs are great. An Oliver and Company show. This is ridiculous. They would never do that. Or just do a Muppet show with real Muppets. None of that, it's just a 3D movie crap. Commit to the Muppets. Bring them to life, Disney. What is wrong with you? Everything comes to an end, especially art, and even more especially live theater. But that's what makes it so meaningful and important. Stop dragging out your shows so that less people go to them and you can eventually close them because there's no one going to your show anymore. Less people are going to the show because a lot of them have seen it before and you've made a markedly worse version of it. So let it die, Disney. Let it all die. It's gonna be okay. Hey gang, thanks so much for watching. The Finding Nemo musical is sort of a weird enigma to me, so I was happy to dive into it and, learn about this weird show. I'm looking for more weird musicals to talk about. I have plenty of ideas. I'm very excited. I think the gap between videos is going to start closing more. I've sort of nailed down a better, working schedule for me because, the Buddies video took up so much of my time that I wasn't able to actually consistently upload for the entire summer pretty much. So now, as I'm working on other bigger videos, I'm going to keep doing smaller ones like this. It's funny to call this a small video. I have a feeling it'll still be a little too long. Right now I'm working on a bigger video and a slew of smaller ones. So get excited for that and, like and subscribe and comment and smash that 5-star button. So thanks for watching. I love you deeply and goodbye.
When you see that ICBM and the party will be come as you are. We will all burn together when we burn. There'll be no need to stand and wait your turn. When it's time for the fallout and St. Peter calls us all out, we'll just drop our agendas and adjourn.